Shadowrift. This is a cooperative game, a deck building cooperative game. It is set in a fantasy world where there is a horde of horrendous monsters that are crawling out of the shadow rifts and that are attacking a village of poor innocent people that you need to defend. You're the hero, this is why you're there. The players are the heroes in the game and they're trying to defend the village. They need to destroy monsters to keep the invasion at bay, but in the meanwhile what they're really trying to do is to either seal the shadow rifts that the monsters are coming from. If they seal enough shadow rifts they win the game, or they're trying to build fortifications around the village to make the village completely impervious to the monsters. Killing the monsters per se will not grant you victory. The monsters are trying to destroy the village, and if indeed the village is completely destroyed, then the players lose the game. If you have heard anything about this game, it is likely that you have heard the expression cooperative Thunderstone. And I see how that expression would be floating around people that have played Shadowrift, because there definitely are similarities. When you look at the table, at the setup, there are things that really are reminiscent of Thunderstone, monsters that move from level to level, even though these are not exactly levels of a dungeon like in Thunderstone. I can see how that expression could be around. However, I really don't see it. After playing the game, the feel of the game to me is entirely different from Thunderstone. Just the experience of playing the game is very different. I play Thunderstone a lot. I just don't see it. I just don't see this as being cooperative Thunderstone. To me, this is a cooperative deck building that also has a fantasy theme. But let me show you how Shadowrift plays, and then maybe you'll be able to form your own opinion about the entire co-op Thunderstone thing. First, I wanted to give you a general view of the play area, of how your table may look like after you set up the game, and then I will show you things more up close, more in detail. Up there you have a monster area with a monster deck. Monsters will come out of that deck and they will start walking along this path that is divided in 4 spaces corresponding to 4 cards. After a monster exits that path, it sits here in the monster power area and it generates power that will attract more monsters. Here you have an area with 8 decks of cards that can be purchased by the players, and these decks can change from game to game. You can select those decks randomly, or you can use scenario instructions, you can choose them. But there is a variety of decks that you can choose those 8 from. So these will change from game to game, and that is great. 4 decks of cards that also can be purchased by the players, but these are basic cards. They will be there in all games. Here you have the village area with a village deck, 5 villagers that are revealed face up each turn, and players can use advantages granted by the villagers. At the end of the phase, well, actually at the beginning of the next turn, you will reset the village. That is, you discard the villagers available, you place 5 more villagers. Here you have an area for travelers, people that are passing through town and that the players can hire. You can purchase either or both of the villagers or the traveling villagers that are available in that area, and if you purchase those travelers, you put them in the discard pile of your town area, so that then they go into the town deck. And villagers that are not purchased from this area go to the bottom of the traveling villagers deck, and 2 new travelers will be revealed the next turn. Some of the travelers coming out of that deck, however, are infiltrators, and infiltrators are bad people, and as soon as you reveal one of them, the infiltrator is put in the discard pile of your town area, so it will go back into your town deck, and then when the infiltrator is revealed, the infiltrator does bad stuff to you, generates negative effects that affect the players. At the beginning of a game's turn, players discard cards that they may still have in their hand from the previous turn, and then they draw 5 new cards from their deck. This is a deck building game after all. Then you refresh town, as I showed you earlier, all villagers out in the discard pile, new villagers in. You refresh the travelers area, same technique. Then the monsters that are in play act. At the beginning of the game there are no monsters in play, but I already placed 3 down to show you how things work. Monsters act. Starting with the monster to the rightmost side of the track, monsters move 1 step on the track and then they act. Monsters may have ongoing effects that are attached to them, and sometimes there are several ongoing effects going on at the same time, so you have to keep track of those. Then you can see monsters act, and the action that the monster performs changes depending on the station that the monster has reached. When moving to the 3rd spot, to spot number 3, this monster kills the explorer, which is one of the traveling villagers that may be in your village by the time that this happens. At this point, when it moved into 2, the monster has killed the mayor. If a mayor was out, may have been able to heal 1 when he was here, and so on and so forth. If a monster is here at the beginning of this phase, the monster moves here and then will generate more monsters. So you simply move, resolve the effect, move, resolve the effect. After the monsters have acted, the monsters gain power. Power for the monsters is recorded in this area. Monsters gain a point of power for each player that is playing the game. With 3 players, 3 points each turn. On top of that, the monsters gain an extra point for each symbol that is in there brought by one of the monsters. For example, this monster here will give the monsters 3 points of power each turn. If this is the situation, the monsters have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points. You look at the monster deck, which is face up, and you look at the top card and look at the cost of the next monster to enter the game. This monster costs 6. The monsters have enough points to do that, to bring this monster in the game, so they spend the points that are necessary to bring this guy in, and that's it, the guy enters the game. And this is how new monsters enter the game. It is also possible that multiple monsters will enter the game in a single turn if there are enough points there to generate more than 1 monster. After the new monsters have been added to the game, finally the heroes get to act. And they can perform several actions. A player is not restricted to a single action per turn. A player can choose to seek aid in town, that is, to use the ability of one of the available villagers. For example, I decide to use the merchant. The merchant gives me a coin. I put the merchant in a discard pile. Get a coin. Thank you very much, Mr. Merchant. Very important, coins are used to purchase resources, of course, but differently from other deck building games, these do not go in your discard pile. They stay in front of you when you acquire them, and then after you spend them, you spend them. Seems counterintuitive in deck building terms, but it's kind of intuitive. You spend them, so you put them back in the original pile. You don't have them anymore. You can spend money only once. You can play skills. There are cards that are labeled as skills. You play them, you resolve the effect, but you may also pay prowess, which is pretty much the general resource that you use in the game to purchase stuff. You can pay that to keep the card in play in front of you. So again, this is something that doesn't have to go in your discard pile and then to be circled back. It may have, but it may not have to. You can play loot cards. Loot cards are pretty much equipment. As you can see, you purchase them usually by spending money, and equipment also is placed in front of you, and then the instruction will tell you when you use it, for how long it stays there, when you discard it, and so on and so forth. Again, something that is not necessarily part of the continuous circle of life that you have in deck building games. You can acquire new cards by paying the cost, which is printed at the bottom of the available cards. These villagers, after they're killed, if the monsters kill them, go in the traveling villagers pile. They will come back as travelers, and you also can then recruit them again. But again, The idea is that you can purchase cards including traveling villagers or just cards that are available here. And you can play actions, and actions are what you need to attack the monsters. Actions may be regular actions. In that case, you can play only one in a turn. You can only play a singular regular action per turn, but then you can also play as many quick actions as you want. Attack actions, pretty simple. They tell you the amount of damage is inflicted on the opponent. For example, range hit, that is a hit that you place on the monster that you're targeting with that hit. There may also be related effect, for example, +1 hit if another hero has dealt a range hit this turn. Some actions can be boosted by spending the corresponding resource. For example, here, by spending a prowess, I also get to draw a card. And as I said, I can combine multiple actions in the same turn as long as they are quick actions. Attacks, they can be melee or ranged. When I'm attacking with a range hit, that's great, I just inflict a hit on the enemy. And of course, when the number of hits matches the number of health points that the enemy has, the enemy is destroyed. And, well, also great, the players receive a heroism card. The first player to deal the final blow to a monster receives a hero card. From that moment on, heroism is not given necessarily to the player that kills a monster. It is simply given to the next player who has not received heroism yet. So heroism is assigned to a player, the monster is removed, and everybody is happy and cheering. This for range attacks or melee hits, as long as the number of hits is sufficient to eliminate the monster. However, melee hits are dangerous because every time that you attack with a melee hit, you receive a wound that is placed in your discard pile. These wounds simply clatter your hand. You can eliminate them by spending prowess, but still it is a drain on your resources. And the good news, however, is that when you're attacking with melee, you only get one wound, no matter how many quick attacks or how much damage you manage to inflict in a single turn. These two strikes would inflict 2 hits on the opponent and would give me a wound that will go to my discard pile. Extremely important, one thing that you can also purchase is walls. These walls are pretty expensive and complicated. There are several types of wall, and you can simply choose the one that you want to build. You do not have to build them in any specific order. You have a player rate that reminds you the cost of each. And walls, once they are built, by paying all of the costs associated with them, go in your village discard pile, then they will come back to your village and they will grant you benefits. Villagers that are killed go to the traveling villagers pile and they are replaced by a corpse card that goes in your discard pile, the pile for the village. So now you've seen the general idea of the game, which is really this. You reset the village, you have the monsters moving, attacking, killing villagers whenever they can. They spawn new monsters, then the heroes get to buy stuff, to use stuff, to attack the monsters, to use chains of effects in the best possible way. And you continue like this until either you manage to build all of the walls. There are 8 walls, and if you build them all, then the village has become an impenetrable fortress. You win the game. Also, in the monster deck, there will be Shadowrift cards. There will be 1 per player, and after they get in play, they can be sealed by using the seal action, which is a spell that you purchase, which is not super expensive. It is not particularly hard to get. It is also useful to have it when you do not have Shadow Rifts around. In any case, if you get rid of all the Shadow Rifts that are in the monster deck, you also win the game. You lose the game is when you are resetting the game, there are no villagers among the 5 cards that you revealed. That is, only infiltrators and corpses, then you lose the game. You also lose the game if all of the possible corpses, all of the corpse deck is in your village discard pile, or better, is in the village in general. And also there are some monsters that have the effect of winning the game. Well, for the monsters, that is, making you lose the game. And there are ways to prevent that from happening, and you should certainly work in that direction. This game has things that I enjoyed enormously, things that could make this my favorite deck building game. At the same time, there are significant drawbacks that to me really detract from the experience. So I guess that my conclusions for this video will sound a little bit like a list of pluses and minuses. Let's start from the pluses, which are huge. This is a fantastically thematic game. It is the most thematic game that I played in the deck building category. Monsters that act in different ways from turn to turn, cards that really feel they're conveying characters, they're conveying actions. I love the theme, I love the way in which the theme is constructed by the mechanics and through the mechanics. I loved some of the options here that you do not have, for example, in Thunderstone. You do not have an entirely bad hand, or much more rarely than you have, for example, in Thunderstone, in which you get the perfect hand or not much to do. Here there is so much flexibility. You can use items that you already have in play and that you do not go back to your discard pile necessarily. You can use an action, an attack, and then buy something. Maybe you do not have attacks, you still get to buy something, or you manage to do both, or several things. I just found the flexibility in the way in which you could use your cards that always or almost always allow me to do something significant, or that I felt had impact on the game. Every turn I felt involved in every turn. It was great interaction among players. Players really benefit by choosing the order in which people do things and the way in which actions are combined. All these things are major triumphs to me. Now, as for the drawbacks, such a wonderful thing, great story, great narrative, great theme, great mechanics. The only two things that I can think of that could ruin the fun, and those would be the game lasting too long, too much of a good thing, until the good thing becomes tedious, and anticlimactic story. You build the story and then the story falls apart like a souffle. Unfortunately, we had both of those. We encountered both. As for the, let's start from the victory and losing conditions, which are unfortunately both anticlimactic. You lose when there are no villagers in your village as you reveal it. You may be doing pretty well. You have a thick deck of very live and kicking villagers that you purchased, you hired. You only have 2 or 3 corpses in there and some infiltrators. You just have an unlucky reveal. You reveal 5 cards with no villagers. Boom, you lose the game. It may not be very often that will happen, but sometimes we got very close to that as we were doing fantastically. Then you feel that really that is a non-meritocratic way of ending the game. What I like in a game to feel a mounting sense of tension is to see that chaos is mounting gradually. At the same time, we the players are trying to get closer and closer to the victory condition. I see these two races going parallel, and sometimes we go a little better, we do better than the chaos, sometimes chaos prevails. And you want to see that, the climax building up. Well, you will lose the game in a very anticlimactic way, and even winning the game may be disappointing. You should try to win the game using the walls, because those are good to have anyways. Even if you have 3, 4, 5, you don't have them all, you still have advantages from the walls. The problem is that you can also win by sealing the Shadowrifts, which may be incredibly easy. It's definitely easier, or it may be harder. It all depends on where the cards, the Shadowrifts, are in the deck. We even seeded the deck in such a way that the Shadowrifts would be not all on top and not all at the bottom. Still, the point is that you work for maybe 2 hours, because the game can be long, for maybe 2 hours. You have most of the walls, the fight going on against the monsters is intense and exciting. The last Shadowrift needed to When the game is revealed, a player plays the seal card and the game is over. That's it. And you played there for 2 hours, you were excited about the game. It is extremely irritating to realize that you won in such a completely uninteresting way, and that you could have won in the same way an hour earlier, maybe even earlier, if that same card had come out of the deck earlier and that seal card had been played, which is not hard to get at all. So that to me really killed the fun. When that happened, you're like, did we win? That's it. It makes you feel that the entire fantastic narrative that you had enjoyed earlier was somewhat for nothing. We tried to play without the Shadowrifts. Okay, then that is what breaks the game. Let's build the walls. And then the game becomes even longer. We have a game that lasted for 2 hours and a half, and then we're just tired and we didn't finish the game. The game may overstay its welcome in that case. Another thing is upkeeping that can be pretty intense. The game can feel fiddly, refreshing this and refreshing that, new villagers, new traveling villagers, move the monsters, see what they do, keep track of all the ongoing effects, don't forget anything, double check this, double check that. Bottom line, I have these two aspects of the game that I cannot reconcile. I think there could be tweaks made to the design to make it great. As is, the design is a near miss. It's something that could have been awesome and epic. It could have made me sell my collection of Thunderstone. It is not going to do it, not anytime soon, until I see significant improvements in the design, because as of now it is a design that I don't feel that encouraged to play, because it may be great, it may amount to an exhausting experience with no much reward, so much potential that could have been expressed better, and to me it is not fully expressed here.